And all of a sudden, I realized that my entire life I had loved and looked for love from a relative persona, from that just the human being that wanted love, needed to be accepted, looked for approval, and so on and so forth. And all my relations were sort of wrapped in that framework of that love is something that has to be given and received.
Welcome to the Holistic Life Navigation Channel. I'm your host, Luis Mujica. I'm a somatic educator and nutritionist, and I'm here to explore every aspect of life through the lens of somatic psychology, nutrition, and philosophy. Let's dive in. Okay, I'm joined by my friend Annette Knopp, and we're here to dive into your book, which is Mystic Nomad. Trying to remember the subtitle, a woman's wild journey to truth. Is that right? To inner truth?
Almost. A woman's wild journey to true connection.
True connection. I love it even better.
Wow.
I first just want to welcome you. You haven't been on my podcast yet. It feels like you have because we talked in other places, but we just haven't. And you are one of the owners, functioners, whatever, overseers of Blue Spirit in Costa Rica. And just wanted to thank you because you've, brought so much to my life by using your instincts to invite me one year when someone requested, and I'm so grateful. It's led me to beautiful places. Thank you.
Thank you. We love to have you there, and especially all what you bring, from bottom-up approaches and fresh ways of decoding the human experience, which I think we all need. So, yeah, we are
My pleasure.
equally gifted that way.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk about this book because for a few reasons. First of all, today's day 2 of the release. Or day 3, apparently. It's been 48 hours. It is out in the world. This book is special because what we were just talking about before I hit record, so many spiritual teachers and practitioners and therapists write just about their model. But you don't really get the behind the scenes of, well, how was it born from their body? What personal experiences gave birth to the wisdom that they now teach from? And what was so interesting as I was reading this was I realized this is the first book I have read in, I don't even know how long it's been. Maybe since I read one of Byron Katie's books. It's the first book I read in a long time where I'm just witnessing someone's personal experiences. And from those experiences that I'm witnessing the wisdom, how you transmuted this stuff into real kind of life-changing, life-saving wisdom for yourself, and then accidentally became a teacher for others. And so it was just beautiful to watch someone's evolution and learn that way instead of being kind of taught a modality and a clinical approach. And I'm assuming that was intentional, but I wanted you to expound on that a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah. It wasn't intentional at the beginning. At the beginning, I wanted to do what most therapists, educators, teachers do, writing a manual. And but my writing became quickly so constipated. And I checked pretty much always against my body. What is going on? Does it feel dull? Does it feel vibrant? And then someone told me, would you write something more personal? And there was first the resistance of like, yeah, but this is not about me. And but then I did just as an experiment, and the writing changed so much in my body. And I read also a piece to my husband, and he started to tear up and cry. And I'm like, oh, geez, I have to write a memoir. And, and it felt really difficult in a sense of, at that point, I always would cringe a little bit about spiritual memoir. Maybe also, I come from a Northern European culture, like I was born in Germany, and we have a very different relationship to what it means to be public than, let's say, North Americans, right? North American culture, I think, breeds extrovertism and the tell-all story. It's something that really flies. And there were even, I can feel the cultural inhibitions in me, like you cannot tell it all, and it wasn't so much about telling it all. From the point where I just followed, what I often call the invisible thread, I was so clear this wanted to come out the way it wanted to come out. And of course, there were moments where there was like, taking an extra breath and really thinking, my God, you really want to write about this? Um, However, I have this fantastic friend, Mark Matosek, and he said, the more personal you write, the more universal it gets. And
Mm.
it felt really true. And when I also think back at the times where I felt pretty lost or pretty broken, although we know we are never really broken, right? But really, those moments, even where I wanted to commit suicide, I would have loved to have a book like mine. So that was also that sense, that hopefully it's a companion to anybody who is working their way through some, challenging moments, difficult trauma, and so on and so forth. So it was a sense, okay, this is how I serve. So that's my gift.
That's beautiful. I was laughing inside about the German North American thing because I did my first handful of workshops in Europe in the beginning of this year in England and throughout Belgium. And it
Oh,
was amazing to see
mm,
compared to the Americans I usually work with in workshops, it's two different worlds. It
yeah.
takes a lot more time to create
Mm,
permission for the Europeans to be like expulsive and
mm,
extroverted and make things about themselves and cry.
yes.
So, so I was just enjoying how you had to go through that whole thing of even though you've been in America for different parts of your life, like I learned from the book, you still your roots are kind of like buckle it up and put it in.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
cathartic to push the button, right, for this book.
Yeah.
And I love that piece about the personal being universal. Because when you were
Mm,
saying, well, this isn't supposed to be about me, this is like a manual, I want to help people. There's something that really transmits for me in the personal because the generosity of exposing something or sharing something that's meant to be shamed or hidden,
mm,
commonly,
mm,
uh, it's such a gift because someone says something that sheds light on something that maybe I've carried and didn't think I was allowed to talk about or feel. So I find that it penetrates the core of a person to really witness someone's experiences even more than like a 10-step guide to peace. So I think this is effective. You've done an effective job here.
Thanks.
What I've done, just so the listener understands, is I've read the whole book, and there's moments that really kind of um, touched me and showed me the root experience that led to certain pieces of wisdom and ways that you teach and ways that you are as a being now, at this age, as a result from all these things that are behind you. And so what I want to do is read some excerpts, and then from there, you and I can kind of dive in and see
Yeah.
where it goes around the wisdom that came up and anything you want to add to it. So this first one is from your earliest chapter, Stripping the Layers. And what I really loved here, which is something I teach people a lot in the embodiment work, which is you can go to a new environment, but you take your body with you. And so the new environment can temporarily be a counter vortex to create some soothing, some interest, some capacity even, but you still have that thing in you you have to relate to. And you wrote here, um, fleeing my old life for India's scenery, sadhus, and seekers had not lightened my load. I still lugged invisible and significant baggage within. And I just want you to expand on the experience of the moment, if you can remember, or the era of realizing no matter how much you traveled, just as the title suggests, Mystic Nomad, you were still with you no matter where you went. Like, tell
Mhm.
us a bit about that.
Mhm. You mean the moment when I realized, geez, now I'm on the run, it's still with me?
That's right.
I think it actually really dawned completely when I read the title, and I don't know how old the book is now, by John Kabat-Zinn, Wherever You Are. How does it go?
Oh no,
Um,
I've heard it.
yeah, but
Wherever you go, there you are, something like that.
yeah, wherever you
Okay.
go, there you are. And I think for a long time, because I was also so dissociated, um, and thanks to dissociation,
Yeah.
I don't think I wouldn't be here without it,
Mm.
right? I think for a long time I could keep the charade for myself, and also because there were all these very diverse circumstances, and I really threw myself into the most different life settings, from living in Tokyo or working on an opal mine in the outback in Australia and so on and so forth. I think at the beginning that sense of open, wide road and also I'm unknown to anybody was so freeing and felt so exhilarating that it didn't allow me to fully actually get to the point where I said, like, hang on a minute, there's something still in you here. And maybe the first time was the moment when I really felt that everything I had looked for or tried out in this nomadic journey hadn't really yielded specific results or whatever my expectations had been. And I think that moment was in Japan, where I had this experience, and it's funny to say experience. It's not really an experience because experiences come and go, but this direct perception of the what we call in Buddhism emptiness of self, that there was no separate solid experiencer at the center of my experience. So the whole thing collapsed. And as I write in the book about it, that was a moment where first I didn't have enough cognitive understanding that this is actually an amazing breakthrough, depending on from where you look. But in deep spiritual wisdom traditions, this dying before you die is a pivotal point where you really look through the illusory construct of I am somebody fundamentally separate from everything else. But because I didn't have that, I didn't know what was going on. And I felt I had clearly lost my mind and that I had actually maybe made a big mistake with throwing myself so into the world and entrusting myself to the heavens. And I think that was the moment was like, Annette, even though I didn't feel I wasn't Annette, but there was still the same, maybe the despair that I had even as a teenager when I had suicidal fantasies. And in my 20s and 30s, that all came up again. And it was a moment where I said, okay, this is it. I give up. And I think that was the point where I realized, yeah, you thought you've made all these amazing experiences but at the end, where's the big liberating truth?
Yeah.
Does this make sense?
It does. I appreciate it. It's one reason why when I teach, I develop this statement that I say, which is you find safety in yourself. Specifically, it's in you, because the safety in yourself is the result of relating to these parts, compared to when I'm looking outward and I think this is going to change something inside of me. Like I said, it's a counter vortex. So there is something you can co-regulate with. There is a difference in scenery, which helps you adapt and shift and you kind of distract yourself from that inner state. But until you've, befriended and moved through whatever you're carrying, it doesn't matter where you go or what happens. Nothing externally shifts that. And you have to really experience it to believe it, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. And also, what you just said is very interesting because that's a bit my critique with generally how people or what people normally expect that meditation can give them. And the way I teach today and the way I hold the whole framework is that we need both. We need sort of, using meditation, any type of awareness practice as a way of uncovering that basic okayness that's here, that also allows us to nurture the capacity to then actually relate to, the discomfort, the pain, and opening up those dark spaces. But so often, I've been around the block now and having a retreat center and in my own journey, I've seen and still see so many people who expect from spiritual practices healing. And there's a limitation to it. So the way I hold it is meditation on one hand, apart from, helping us to really allocate attention, uncovering what's already deeply okay and complete within me, right? the unborn God of being, that natural wakefulness, cutting through, the trances that our discursive mind and, the negative brain sort of like popcorn out all the time. But the very few practices as they're taught these days are actually really pointing towards it's not enough to just observe your material. You also need to open it up. And that's really, really important. And this is also for me when I came then to a somatic practice, and I recall the time in Amsterdam when I met my focusing teacher, which is, Eugene Gendlin, who actually coined the term bodily felt sense. That was sort of the start of my somatic descent. And for the first time, it was like, oh my God, this is a way of grappling with those mental, emotional states, or that, those tightly wound tensions and dissociation that felt like a kind way of having a conversation with myself. But none of the, everything is empty and,
Yeah.
all the great breakthroughs, no matter how genuine they were not giving me that gateway.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. It's one reason when I teach embodiment, I'll remind people consistently that embodiment isn't about calm, because there's this, like you said, like emptiness, openness, calm. There's these kind of buzzwords that we think that means we're healing. But
Yeah,
for me, the most healing experiences were extreme visceral turbulence, getting into these states and never had been felt before. They were beyond painful and uncomfortable and strange. And that was actually what needed tending to. It wasn't space. Space came from tending to it, right? But it wasn't
yeah,
like space was the thing that I needed to get to. I needed to go through that first.
yeah,
So you and I both found great anchoring in somatics. It was, pretty life-changing for us.
yeah, yeah.
I really love this other piece, this other part of the book that something I love to talk about is in this chapter, Fractured Connections, which love that title so much. There's this piece, and I'll read it in a moment, that speaks to humanizing our parents. This is how I saw it. You tell me where you met with it. Humanizing our parents from seeing them as something they should be or what I expect from them to, oh, they're human beings with a finite amount of capacity as well. And you write it so beautifully. So you put here, from my yearning and needing for feeling seen, sensed, and soothed and held, it compelled me to reflexively fawn over my dad, hoping he could undo the red thread of pain weaving itself through my heart. My parents, like all of us, were only able to be open to or pass on what they had received or healed in their lives, their own history or parent-infant bonding, emotional injuries, or undischarged trauma, as well as the legacy of growing up during the complex years of war and post-war Germany.
Mm.
So you said this, you started the paragraph in hindsight. So like looking back now, let's speak about this a bit because I've seen people heal so much anger and I shouldn't even say anger, like resentment and rage that's literally poisoning them. I've seen them heal that by humanizing their parents, by not taking it personally, by understanding, oh, this is a capacity thing. This wasn't even a me thing as the child. Just open that up for us a little bit, how that was for you and what you understand now.
Mm. I think it all really shifted when I had, interestingly enough, not so much an understanding of, somatic and trauma, but when I was in Australia and I had this very pivotal, deep opening into, you can say, the seamless field of reality. And all of a sudden, I realized that my entire life I had loved and looked for love from a relative persona, from that just the human being that wanted love, needed to be accepted, looked for approval, and so on and so forth. And all my relations were sort of wrapped in that framework of that love is something that has to be given and received.
Hmm.
And with that comes a conditionality of course, then it's always like, you don't give me enough, you don't love me the right way. And we all can find 10,000 reasons how that is even true, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
But so that was really a breakthrough. And I remember when I left my fiance in Spain, I had to paint him really black inside of me because there was love. But in order to leave him, I had to make him worse inside my psyche so I could
Hmm.
sort of cut off. And that was the first person that came in after this. Wow, this is actually all a seamless field of love that even the worst experiences are made out of this substance. And I wrote him a letter and I apologized. And I just realized, wow, if we don't recognize that love is nothing, how to say, is not a thing.
Hmm.
We can't even have fulfilling relationships. And I think from that point, I started to see everything through this prism of how everybody is trying to find love or give love or heal. Um, but it's really important to have a foundation somewhat, and it doesn't need to be love. Love is a big word for many people, but to really have as a foundation that direct recognition and perception, there's a basic okayness in all of us.
Hmm.
Everything around that is everybody trying to sort of finding that outside or through others. Um, yeah, and I think that shifted it for me.
And what did it feel like even in your body when you think of it now, when you see your parents, your father through this lens of here's
Hmm.
this person I was holding so much, didn't have access to therapy, didn't have the tools I had, and they had a child that they didn't know how to give
Yeah.
anything to. Like, where does that go for you now?
It feels very free. I don't even want to say I feel compassion for them because it almost sounds like pitiful, that I'm,
Hmm.
but it feels very free. There's no resentment. There's like so much, even a sense of awe and if anything, maybe a little, I'm so sorry that you didn't have the resources. I'm so sorry. My father passed away already. So there is that sense, of that somehow I was lucky enough to be born in a different time, having access to resources. Um, and yeah, and he didn't.
That's right. I often say that even though we come from people who might have abused us, neglected us, mistreated us, we during this time have a greater privilege than they did to access resources. And that's a really empowering thing when you understand that.
Yeah.
And for me, it's helped me take things less personally when I think of things people did to me or how they treated me. And maybe just for the listener, because they haven't read your book yet, taking these little excerpts. Maybe some of them have, but not everyone has. Before I go into this other piece about your mother, which I loved, give them a little background of your relationship to your parents. They understand why it is we're talking in this way. How would you
Mm.
have explained your upbringing, with connection and such?
Mm. Very complicated.
Sure, sure.
Probably complicated. Okay, so maybe I just go a little back because what you were saying also, there's another piece there, right? There's recognizing that our parents or whoever it was who created maybe more difficulty or was part of a very traumatizing environment. I think the element of forgiveness, and I never related to that word.
Hmm.
It always felt a very convoluted term. And I understand, and maybe other people hold it differently, but for me, it was always like there was an element of you're forced to do something. And the way I've come to experience forgiveness is not even like an act that I had to do. It was this coming to terms with these realizations that pretty much everybody's trying to do their best in a certain way. Um, and this doesn't mean of course there are acts of, um, there are horrific acts, right? And this is sort of sometimes a bit difficult for people to understand that, yes, there is the basic core of Buddha nature or the innermost essence that is actually pure. However, how it expresses itself, there's a whole spectrum in consciousness between, is this expressed through ignorance or through wisdom? And the ignorance aspect really just boils down to recognizing what is the essence, right? What is already okay within us.
Listen, do you hear something? That's the sound of warm, delicious, glorious Costa Rica. And this is where I am headed next. On February 28th, I'm hosting a week-long retreat at the stunning Blue Spirit Retreat Center. And it's going to focus on recovering from emotional eating and people-pleasing by finding safety within. And there's truly not a better place for me to teach this than Blue Spirit. Blue Spirit has created a literal sanctuary for wildlife, native plants, and people who are lucky enough to retreat there. Picture a vibrant jungle canopy atop a hill with a saltwater infinity pool, yoga classes, next-level local cuisine, and beautiful views of the land and sea. Not to mention the very special, magical experience of wading in the saltwater pool while a crew of little baby monkeys rests on the branches above you. Your room is situated just minutes from the most beautiful ocean I've ever met, with tide pools featuring everything from blue octopus to starfish and a rainbow variety of tropical fish. And yes, I will be personally introducing you to each and every one of them. So let's go into the retreat itself. I'll be joined by my dear friends Zach and Camille as we teach you the art of finding safety in yourself, especially as it relates to fawning and people-pleasing and eating habits, which are all very connected. I'm going to teach you how to eat to recover from stress and trauma, how to use food cravings as a compass for unmet needs, how to tend to your capacity for being seen and being uncomfortable so you can stop fawning so much, and how to embody and ground big emotions and sensations that arise in your body. It's an easy flight to the airport, and Blue Spirit will manage your transportation from there. Visit holisticlifenavigation.com and click on events for more information, or click on the link in the episode details. We will be waiting for you on the other side in glorious, warm, vibrant Costa Rica.
So my mom, I had two psychologists sort of diagnosing her as borderline. So what in her case that meant was that she disowned and deposited all her self-shame, her emptiness, her pain into her daughters. So my sisters and I, we were three at home. We grew up with implicit or explicit messages of we're accidents, you're just a nuisance. When we were sick, it was a nuisance. My mom called me parasite. That was her go-to word for me. So there was a lot of, the incredible, painful lack of worth within my mom. She just passed it on. So that's obviously something quite difficult to grow up with. I didn't have a sense of self, actually, for a long, long time, because there was just not enough of a positive reflection to even wanting to have one. And then my dad, he was a little bit healthier in that sense. He had a really incredible, loving mom, but she died when he was young, and then he grew up during the war. He got beaten at home. That was just how people dealt in Germany at that time with kids. It was about break their spirit. And then additionally, I think what for my dad was difficult as well was that my grandfather was opposing the Nazis. So in school also he got, bullied for not going to Hitler Youth and all of that. So, this is a pretty dark soup. And it led him to become an alcoholic. He, again, didn't have any resources. going to therapy in Germany, even after the war, was considered like, this is for crazy people.
Hmm.
It was very different than, what you find in the US, people
Yeah.
who in the 60s in the US, right? The flower power, the hippie, they were already psychedelic. So there was a whole field of possibilities, opportunities to decode your human experience, whether it's through, Buddhist practice, Tibetan had already come over, all types of therapy from Gestalt and so on and so
Mhm.
forth. So that wasn't available to my parents. And so yeah, that was, I don't even know how to explain it further, but that was the family environment I grew up with. And my dad was pretty absent, um, partly through his alcoholism, or he was working hard and trying to make it. Yeah.
Well, it's a perfect segue to this other piece with your mom because you talked about not having a sense of self, which, when you're not attuned to, when you're not touched, when you're not connected with, when there isn't consistent co-regulation throughout development, you literally can't feel yourself. It's like the developing child body requires to be witnessed to even exist.
Mhm.
So what's interesting is you were talking about forgiveness, and when I read this piece, I thought, oh, this is what forgiveness means to me. And it's this uncoupling moment you have with your mother when you return home after traveling a bunch, and she was still in that way of not being able to connect, but you didn't have the associations you had before. So I want to read this part and we can go into that a little bit. He wrote, I no longer misinterpreted her short hug and turning away as a message I was unlovable or unworthy. It was the first time I dropped into the acceptance of our relationship having its obvious failures and limitations. By giving up my struggle with how reality appeared to be, my mind's insistence of needing her to be different so that I could be happy dropped away. That's huge. That's Byron Katie, who's one of my personal teachers, would talk about forgiveness is when you suddenly no longer believe something you used to believe. Like the thing you thought it was isn't that thing anymore. And so instead of this moment of forgiveness as we come to see it, you literally gave up this story that was killing your body around your mother. Like everything she was unable to do was saying to your body, I am unworthy. Something's wrong with me. I can never be happy till she can love me. And it's fascinating how we orient to the very individuals who don't have capacity for connection and expect connection. It keeps us in that constant rupture with them. So I wanted to go into this kind of moment you had, this real-time uncoupling, which seems like it happened by mistake. I mean, you were putting in the work, but in that moment, it seemed like it just kind of disconnected from you. When I
Mhm.
say that, when I read that back to you, and even you feel into your body, what comes up? What do you notice?
Mhm. What comes up is a need to acknowledge that this was a first start and that there were so all the pieces within me, all the ways of how my psyche, neurobiology tried, to find this connection with the other, the bonding experience, the trying to make up for what felt lacking within.
Hmm.
That was just the starting point. And afterwards, I had a whole need to relate differently to the parts within me that still held the story in some way. And I think
Hmm.
that's always very interesting, right? It's like we have a deep insight. We really, oh my God, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And then, well, it's not so easy to then immediately live that, embody that. It's almost like a little schizophrenic at the beginning, right?
Yes, it is.
Inside, it's I
I'm
say,
just gonna say I'm so glad you're saying that because people think when they do an uncoupling practice in somatic sessions, I'm
mm,
uncoupled, and I'll always say your feeling what it's like to be uncoupled is gonna come right back. Like
yeah,
it's been practiced for thousands of times in your lifetime. So I just appreciate you kind of putting that piece there that this was a moment of insight, but there's gonna
mhm,
take years of practice to actually maintain that.
yeah. And at the same time, if I feel into my body and you reading this, there is that mm, mm, there's a deep, I don't know, happiness is not the word. Is it sort of like a blossom of that inner love affair with myself?
Yeah.
Um, and I think this is so empowering, right? When this spell is broken. And there's this word, like you're the one who you have been always waiting for.
Yes.
And so that there is really the power for healing is really within, and the power to find the love and acceptance and being met in the way we needed, wanted is actually really, it's below our noses. So that comes up. There's an incredible gratitude, I think. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I can't believe that we're almost out of time because there's so much I want to go into. I kind of want to do just a brief overview for the listener, just a couple things that I felt were important that we won't have time to get into deeply right now. In general, this whole book, as I was reading it, is like here's this little girl that was born to a family where she wasn't attuned to very well because of these, traumas of her parents, capacity issues, you name it. And then you went out thinking, I'm going to find this kind of amazing attunement. And you did at times. And then you also found manipulation of that desire. And you specifically, many chapters are on this spiritual teacher that you really loved deeply in your heart, not fell in love with, but loved so deeply and trusted and really got so much out of. And this same man ended up using your trust, your desire for truth discovery, as he would mention it, in order to get you to sleep with him, to have this experience. And I think what really moved me was this one sentence when you said, you were paralyzed, you were stuck in a vortex of voiceless shame, too caught in my spiral of self-blame to mention the hideous consensual sex and incapable of even remembering the rape. Because there's a difference. There's a difference between regrettable consensual sex, even if the other was, being somewhat manipulative. A part of you was like, I'll do this. And you were so beautifully clear in the book. It was freeing to read your clarity of the moment your mind changed from, there's no way I'm going to go to his bedroom, to I'm going because I want to do this experiment for truth finding, which is how he kind of packaged it. And then the second experience of clearly saying no, trying to get away, and being forced into being raped. That was just an important moment for me because I do so much work around sexual fawning and sexual trauma from my own sexual assault experience. And I've had my own where I had a regrettable consensual experience with someone that then later turned into a rape. And it's important just to say that both can happen, that a regrettable sexual experience that's consensual isn't a rape. It can still be sexually traumatic. And then there can be, with the same person or another somewhere along the line, a non-consensual one. Your ability to really own that, to be like, I actually gave into something even though I knew not to, and then own, I didn't give into this. It was against my will, my body, my capacity. It was just really profound. And it's a big question, but we only have a little time, so I'll see how we can condense it. It leads to this other part in the book where this woman sees you as her teacher and she wants to surrender to you and give you all this money. I think it was like her inheritance or something. She's like, I'm giving it all to you. And I love that you said you shouldn't surrender to me. And I can't imagine, had you not had these experiences of being manipulated by someone you really trusted, that you maybe wouldn't have had that confidence saying, don't you dare surrender to me. And how
Yes.
that's still how you teach. You teach from that place of like, I'm not your guru, this is about you, not me.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we just in 2 minutes somehow sum that up for me?
Yeah. Well, what was for a long time very difficult for me was to understand how could that have happened? Even that consensual sex. We can say he manipulated me, he groomed me, it was on a silent retreat, all of that. That's all true. But as you retell so aptly, there was a moment like, no, this is not right. And then what was it that gave over? And my experiences these days is, or what I've learned from it, and I see it, is the more psychologically wounded we are, the more we tend to over idealize others.
Mhm.
And it creates this obviously very unhealthy power dynamics. And I think it's something that's also, unfortunately, my story is not unique in any way.
Mhm.
It's happened over and over again to men, to women. Um, but it also has a little bit to do how, that guru figure, which is actually something from the East. It's not something that's really in the Western culture. We have a very different culture, how to relate to intermediaries. And I see a lot of people still doing it. They want, and this is it's funny, there's even a covered self-adulation because, if I adore you, will you adore me back? Which is a
Mhm.
bit like a child, right? It's like the gleam beam, like when
Mhm.
a little child like sort of beams at you and then you beam back, which we know is like real contact nutrition, is an incredible, powerful, not just bonding experience, but something, this hyper-social species really needs, for good development. And I think it's a replay of that.
Yeah.
And we don't have enough of that sense of self, right? And self-validation or self-belonging and a sense of sovereignty. We so quickly give over and we're looking for perfect mommy and daddy out there, and they don't exist. We are all just humans. We all cook with water, no matter how much mileage we have under the hood.
I want to say that you saying that right now, um, I get such a I get such a felt sense of I'm trying to this thing happens to me sometimes where I feel a sensation and it takes over the words that I heard. So I'm just gonna feel the sensation for a minute just to see what it brings up in me.
Mm.
Yeah, it's this place in me that it took me to. There's a great power in actually owning and finding that place in you that's willing to hand it over to someone because you're so desperate for love. That's what I was really feeling when you were talking. That
Mm.
not to shame doesn't help to shame yourself. I wouldn't even say it's doing anything wrong. It's doing the thing to survive. You're desperate for connection. And so when I heard that kind of the regrettable consensual sex, the one that just was not what you wanted or needed to do anything for you, but you were able to find the place, it was like, yes, I will do this because I am desperate for this belonging, this connection, this,
Mhm.
archetype, this role in my life. There's a power to finding that place in us that will give anything up for connection.
Mhm.
Because for me, when I found that place and I started being with it, I wasn't as quick to reflexively do it anymore. But when I didn't find that place, when I only made it about the other, which, like you said, the grooming, the manipulation, the power dynamics, all true. But when I only focused on that, I lost my tendency to do it again and again and again and again. Just like how we
Exactly.
started this conversation, like I bring that luggage with me wherever I go. So if that lives in me, it's
Mhm.
vulnerable to it being exploited. So I want to work with it so it's not vulnerable to being so exploited. So I
Right.
thank you for that. And as I read those paragraphs, those chapters, I really got that sense for myself. And it was very empowering, very emboldening. Uh,
Can I add something? Sorry for
Please.
jumping because I know we are out of
Yeah,
time.
go.
Because now, I don't want listeners to think, oh my God, I did it wrong. Why do I project this onto my therapist? Why do I, and what really healed it full circle for me was finding this book by Jungian analyst Robert Johnson, The Inner Gold. And he speaks about that we all need at some points in our lives others to hold our inner gold because we can't
Mhm.
feel it, we don't have it. And the only problem that exists is that this process of this alchemical exchange, will you please be my guide? Will you please
Mhm.
play that uber compassionate therapist for the next few months for me? Will you please guide me through the darkness? It doesn't just need to be an authority figure. Sometimes we have it with friends, right? So the only problem is when that is not made conscious.
That's
And
right.
and that specifically that the one who holds your goal is aware of, I'm holding your gold, but I know this is not mine, and I give it back to you as soon as you're ready to hold it.
I'm so glad you added that because that's such a beautiful way to say it. Because we go into this unconscious contract with people, and
Hmm.
I'm wanting you to hold my gold. You're holding it. No one knows what's happening. It gets
Yeah.
manipulated, it gets misattuned. People's egos get in the way. Because people we go to hold our gold, they have attachment ruptures. So then they feel this sense of power, like, oh my gosh, someone trusts me this much. And it takes a lot of work to be with power. You're given a sense of power when someone gives you this vulnerability and asks you to hold it. But if it's not explicit, you can't really tell if anyone's even consenting to receiving it or doing anything with it. So I love that. It's a beautiful add-on. I want to
Mhm.
thank you so much. This is such a beautiful contribution to the world. You are such a beautiful contribution to the world. And now people get a little like taste of it and they can go listen to the book, read the book, get a sense of it. Is there an audio version?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not
Oh,
yet.
yet.
But-
Yet is the key word. So you can go read it for now and
Yes.
follow Annette and look her up and reach out to her. I'll have any of your info in the episode details for people to connect to you. But thank you so much, love. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you for watching today's episode. Please like and subscribe if you found it useful, and let me know in the comments what you want me to cover next. I have developed a 4-week self-paced course that takes 18 years of my personal and professional experience and puts it into one place where you can easily and quickly learn the foundations of recovering from stress and trauma. How does the food you eat affect your stress levels? How do the relationships in your life create stress or peace? How does the relationship you have with your body allow you to feel happier and more settled? I will cover all this and so much more in this 4-week self-paced course. And the best part, it's self-paced. You don't have to sign up at a certain date or finish it at a certain time. It's yours for life, and it's waiting there for you when you're ready to finish it. Throughout this course, I'll be teaching you philosophies and practices that combine my 3 favorite modalities: somatic experiencing, embodied parts work, and nutrition. For more information on this course, click on the link in my episode details.